It's been a minute past the scheduled time, so let's get started. For those of you who are here, there's going to be a raffle, there's going to be giveaways from Sketch. So it's going to be 12 months of subscription for you guys. So stay tuned, and we're going to be announcing the winners at the end. And so let's get started. My name is Ashima. I'm your host. I'm a mentor at ADPList, like the rest of our speakers. I'm going to go ahead and introduce them, but I'd love it if you guys also had something to add to your introductions. So with us, we have Helena, who is a product designer from Harness. We have Nicholas, also product designer from Okta. We have Edward Chu, a UI UX mentor from Springboard. So the floor is yours, Helena, if you want to get started and maybe add something to that.
Sure. So hi, everyone. I'm from Zagreb, Croatia, and I'm very happy to be here and excited to be here. And I'm a product design lead at Springboard and Harness. I worked at Springboard for some time, but I'm here representing Sketch, and I'm very happy to be able to have opportunities like this because I think it helps junior designers and all designers to figure out what they're doing with their design lives. And a bit more about me. I'm all over the place usually. I work a lot with design, I mentor, I teach, I do hands-on design. I donate my time working free for NGOs that can't afford me. I work as a design lead, I said that one already, but I generally try to do everything with design. I'm always curious, I try to share my knowledge, and I enjoy what I do. So someone else can take it, maybe Edward.
Sure, thank you. So nice to meet you all. I'm Edward. I'm currently a staff product designer at SamaCare. It's a health tech company. Like perhaps maybe a lot of folks on the call as well, my background was originally in graphic design and then transitioned into UX and product design right now. And I'm joining here representing Springboard. I'm a mentor on Springboard and ADP as well. And really excited to meet all of you guys. Hopefully we can have a wonderful conversation that everyone can have something good to bring back. Over to you, Nicholas.
Thanks, Edward. Hi, everyone. I'm Nicholas. I'm a product designer at Okta. I've been a product designer at Okta for 4 years, and I'm also a mentor at ADPList, which I've been doing for the past couple of years. I'm originally from Mexico City, and I have a background in architecture. So like many people or many of you, I did a transition into UX design myself and found the challenges that I went through. And my goal as a mentor in ADPList and being part of this talk is to share my experiences, my knowledge, and hopefully help other people go through that transition as well. So really excited to be here, and hopefully it's going to be a fun conversation.
Awesome, thanks guys. So our first question, and just keep in mind for those of you who are listening in, you can, at the end of the session, you can send in your questions as well. So our first question is, how did you develop your holistic approach to product design, and what are your tips on this? Maybe Helena, you could get started and we could go the same way.
Okay, I'm breaking the ice, woo! So how did I develop my holistic approach to product design? I don't think I ever did, but I think I still am, because it's a work in progress and it's something that you have to work on all the time. You have to stay curious. That's actually the thing I have written down. I have my notes hidden. So curiosity is what keeps me going. I try to find things that I don't know and then learn more about them. And in product design, that's the amazing thing about design, because you can learn everything you think you can learn, and then you figure out that you just scratched the surface, and it's just like a deep rabbit hole. You don't need other hobbies, you can just do design. And every industry is different, and you can just learn more and more about every industry. So you can stay inside of one industry, you can not stay in one industry, you can just work wherever you want. And I think that for me, the complexity of every new project is where I find the exciting part. The more complex something is, the more fun I have untangling the project. And then when it all lays out, I'm very happy because it all makes sense. And that's the best part about the design. This doesn't mean, I think I mostly define myself as a generalist designer because I do the whole process from start to end. And it's fun because I get to do everything. I get to touch into each part of it, but that also doesn't mean that I'm not a specialist in anything. I had several parts of my career where I got really obsessed about something, and then I would dive in deeper into that topic. So I have deep knowledge in several topics, but I also have a very broad knowledge about other topics. An example was I was working on a project and I had to work on icons. So what do I know about icons? I know they're pretty, I know I like them, I know they have to do something and look good in the design, but I dove in deeply and I found a mentor and he talked me through design making about the icons, and it was very fun. And after that, I moved on to other parts of design, and it's good. When you find something, dive in deeply. Still, I do hands-on work, but now I'm mostly moving my attention towards leadership and mentoring and teaching and things like that. But it's important to continually grow your skills, read blogs, talk to other people, find mentors, be a part of the community, talk to other designers, work on your business skills, anything that you feel threatened by, work on it, and that's going to make you grow. So my tips here are stay curious and get obsessed with something and then dive in deep. And I guess, Edward, you can take it away.
That's good. That's really great. Thanks for sharing. I would really echo on staying curious. Definitely number one tips being a designer, you just want to be curious. Another point I'd like to highlight would be, because as a designer, you're working with different people, you want to dive deep into researching a user. So aside from staying curious, is also talk about communication and sharing. So the more you share, the more feedbacks you get. If you don't share, it's hard for you to get feedback. So gathering feedbacks could not only reflect on yourself, but also your ideas, your team, overall, holistically, I would say. And as I've been in the industry for a couple of years now, going deeper and deeper, I kind of generate a little formula that I use to approach product design, and I call them 3 different abilities. The first one would be feasibility. The second one would be viability. The third one would be desirability. So feasibility meaning, is my solution feasible from an engineering standpoint? And viability is my solution viable for the business? Does it make sense for the business to invest this much resource to develop and in return get the value that the business would want to generate? And of course, as a designer, desirability, is our solution desirable by our customer or user? I think finding the balance in between these 3 pillars at that moment, thinking long-term for scalability is the best solution that you can have at that moment of time. And it also makes the other teams feel important as well when you consider them as well. Therefore, balancing your solution, staying curious, and share and gather more feedbacks would be my approach and tips. Just want to wrap that up like that. And Nicholas, you can go.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just add a couple more things. When it comes to holistic design, the first thing that comes to mind for me is focusing beyond the user, right? Looking beyond your immediate user and thinking about the whole approach, which is basically what Helena and Edward just mentioned. And going back to the question of how it developed, like my holistic design approach, I agree that it's something you're still developing and you're kind of never done. But a good example is my background in architecture. In architecture, if you have an holistic design, means that you're going to look beyond the immediate users of the space. You're going to be looking into like energy consumption, structural engineering, environmental impact, etc. Right? So in order for a project to be successful in architecture, you should be looking at all of those things together. And that same applies to product design, right? You should be looking at the whole thing, not just immediately at the user. If any of you are curious, go ahead.
If I can chime in, sorry, I interrupted you. A lot of people are transferring into design from other industries and other work. There are tons of transferable skills, and you did very well to highlight them. You just have to look in deeply into what you can transfer into design. So everybody can do design, and everybody already has the skills. They just need to apply them. I'm so sorry.
No, that's totally fine. I totally agree with that. The tips that I was going to add, I basically divided into 2 different buckets. The first one is as a designer, what you can do. The first one is ask questions beyond your screen, beyond your touch point, and be curious about what happens beyond that. And basically what Helena was saying at the beginning. Also look at the whole user life cycle. Like when you start working on something, the interaction of that user with your product, service, company is usually going to be beyond the screen, right? There's other things that the user is going to experience as part of the relationship with your company, whatever you're working with. So take a look at the whole life cycle. You can use many tools for that. There's like journey maps, user stories. So definitely many tools that can help you basically take a look at the whole approach. Another thing though to think about it that I've struggled with in the past is there's like company level tips, I guess. Like even though if you're looking at the experience from your designer perspective and trying to think about it holistically, there has to be a company level like mind shift to have like a holistic approach to design in general. That usually means like allowing you to collaborate with people beyond your circle and being able to talk with customer success or other people that have also communication directly with the users and help you understand the whole life cycle. Yeah, and that's basically like the tips that I have for like company and like you as a designer as well.
That's brilliant. I think it was great that all 3 of you touched on different points. Helena, you with the T-shaped individual. Edward, you talked about the perfect marriage of product, business, and usability. And Nicolas talked about transferable skills, and he mentioned a bunch of tools that are going to help you and you could leverage to come up with a more holistic approach. So our next question is, tell your everyday go-to product design mantra, and how do you manage to reflect that onto your work? So I'll open the floor up to either Edward, Nicolas. Do you want to lead? Feel free to jump in.
I'm happy to start.
Okay. Awesome.
I'll keep it short. It's kind of what I was saying in the previous question, which is for me, my mantra is the user is only one piece of the puzzle, right? If you really just focus on the user and you don't think about anything else, high likely the product is not going to be successful. So to truly make it successful, you really need to understand the business goals. You know, really have to work with your business partners, such as product managers, whoever is working on that area, and making sure that whatever you're designing actually is going to help move the business or whatever you're trying to achieve forward. Like Edward was saying, feasibility, you know, if whatever you're designing is not feasible and it's not technically possible, it's really going to be hard to build and make it successful. So working closer with engineering, for example. And another example I think about is like brand, you know, like at the end of the day, you also have to work with your visual design team or whoever's leading your brand, because your product at the end of the day is part of your brand, it's part of the company, it's part of your service. So everything has to work together. So keeping that in mind, I feel as designers, we tend to focus on the users and be the advocates for them, which we should 100%. I'm not pushing back on that, but it's not the only piece of the puzzle. There's definitely way more than that. Who wants to go next?
Oh, my mantra is UX is everywhere. While like, you know, when we say UX product design, the first thought is obviously on the user. But to me, and I want to spread that to everyone, is that UX is everywhere. It's just not on your user. UX is how me as a designer can make an engineer's life easier, how me as a designer can make my product manager's life easier. During an interview, how me as an interviewer can make interviewee can make the interviewer feels better as well. So UX is everywhere. You know, how us 4 here hosting this panel can make everyone in the call learn something and feel pleasant is UX. So I would like to highlight that, and how I try to put it in my work is to really reflect that, because as a designer, we're ambassador for UX for empathy. So it only makes sense for me to demonstrate that in my working relationship with different departments. And the better relationship you build, the more collaboration and better collaboration will come out for it, therefore generating better ideas, better solution, and most of all, make work fun for you. That's very important. And that will be really my approach, focus on the people, because our job, while we are focusing on user, everyone is our user as well. And we are a user of everyone as well. So being able to go around with that people-oriented mindset and approach will definitely help you in your career, not just as a designer, but I would say in any job. Yeah. Helena, you have anything to add?
No, you both covered it pretty perfectly. Basically, you both covered it perfectly. That was the thing that I wrote down as well. So cooperation is something that I pride in, and cooperating with the people that you work with is very, very, very important. Building good relationships, making sure that everybody has a nice day, making sure that everybody, I'm not saying go out of your way to make somebody's day nice, but when you're discussing something with someone, try to take into account that maybe they're not having the best day. So maybe their snappy comments aren't targeted towards you and your design. I'm just saying, be aware that you're working with people. So what I wanted to say was, you need to cooperate and you need to make the best out of your design. The way I approach that is, when I'm designing something, I talk to my developers and I say, hey, I have this idea. Is this something that we can do? And then they say, yeah, but maybe not like this. Like, you can do something else. It could work out better this way. And then that's even before I started designing. So I have an idea, I check it with developers, then I create the design, I check it again, and then I send it over to the PMs, because I know it can get built. So it's not going to be a question, we're going to have a meeting where everybody is going to be against everybody and developers are going to say, no, that cannot be done because blah, blah, blah. I've never worked with bad developers because I always talk to them. And then you get communication, and communication gets everything out of the way. So communicate with people, and especially if you work asynchronously, like I mostly do, leave comments, leave annotations on your designs, talk to people, use the Slack channels that are for remote relationship building, like pets or something else. Just build relationships. That's gonna make your day better in the end of the day. And I think that's it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, by the end of it, everybody's working towards the same goal. You all want to sell your product. You all want your users to be happy. So everyone's trying to do the same thing you are. It's all a matter of communicating. Brilliant. Okay, what are the top 3 reality checks when it comes to expectations from a career in product design?
Maybe I can start this one.
Go for it.
I would say, like, when I mentor different designer, a lot of them get the perception that, UX product design is really just focusing on doing cool looking visual, improving the current workflow in that aspect, which is correct. But a lot of lack of focus would be, research is really, really important, I would say. Research is the fundamental of product design, because aside from being, having the creative talent to come up with the right solution, you first want to identify you're solving the right problem first. So otherwise, you would be doing a lot of repeated work in that aspect. So I would say research is a heavy part of product design cycle. It's the beginning of the cycle. So for those of you who may be new to this field, definitely consider and learn more about user research in that aspect. And the other part I think we highlight a lot would be really on communication. Like I said, if you have a great design, great idea, but you also need to be able to communicate well with developers, to get them to buy in, to communicate to different stakeholders, to get the sales to work with you and sell the right idea as well, and making sure that people are aligned, they understand your idea correctly. So really focusing on communication is a really important skill set as well, that you as a designer will be doing a lot, especially right now. A lot of us are working remotely. So like what Helena mentioned earlier, a lot of us working async. So, leave those comments or send Slack message, give people heads up, even like set up a meeting, but add an agenda. That is important. People know, what is that for? Yeah, I would just like to kickstart this one like that. And Helena or Nick, feel free to jump in.
Sure, I can go. Okay, I have 3 related checks that I learned from working on fast-paced environments in tech and trying to ship a lot of products, and things that I learned the hard way. And it still happened a few times, or still happening, and it's more comfortable you get with those, they're going to be, in my experience, product designer. And I have one bonus at the end. This one is outcome over process. And I'm not trying to push for not having a process, but in reality, users don't see it. It doesn't matter as much. At the end of the day, if the product is out there and it's successful, that's great. So you still should be doing your process, of course, and making sure it takes you to the right decisions. But be smart about it and use really the frameworks and the things that are truly helping you to get where you're trying to go. The second one is about, and the reason why I mentioned the first one is I've spent a lot of time living in my career, documenting everything, like going through different frameworks, everything that I could do. But at the end of the day, if the product is not used, the product is not successful, all of that process doesn't really matter. The second thing is being able to adapt. And this is hard and really takes time to master. But sometimes you have an amazing design, everyone agree on it, engineering agree with it, it's great. Somehow the code phrase was earlier than expected, and they got 2 days to go there. You're like, okay, what do I do about it? So you have to adapt the designs. The design was the best, design was the best piece of it, or the MVP, and just be able to ship with it and be comfortable with that. So sometimes have to work fast and just adapt as you go, and that's totally fine. And the third one, which is related to the previous one, is just trust your gut. A lot of times you're not going to have time to do all the process that you wanted. Like, research is great. You should always start with it. You should validate all your designs. In reality, sometimes you don't just have the time. You're required to make design decisions within seconds, and those are going to be translated into product. They're going to be pushed to code. So it's really uncomfortable, but you have to just trust your gut, believe that what you're doing is the best, and just keep moving forward. And don't let those rushed moments stop you, right? Just try to keep moving forward. My bonus reality check is a little bit different, but usually UX is related to like big compensation, right? And that's a lot related to tech. For me, it's just another job. If you're passionate about what you do and really put your focus on your craft, compensation, roles, growth, that gets solved on its own. If you focus on just, I want to get into UX because the compensation, that kind of stuff, usually that doesn't work. So really check, like anything in life, just focus on your passion, focus on your craft, and those things will work on their own.
I think that's a very, very strong ending. I went the more funnier approach, so I'm gonna refer to that meme. What I think I do, what my friends think I do, and then what I actually do. So that's basically the thing that you have to have in your head. People are always going to think that you're doing much cooler things that you actually do, and the reality is not as fun and flashy. So there are a couple of sentences I wrote down. I'll make the coolest, shiniest, prettiest, most interactive design ever. Yeah, sure, but not really, because you have to check with developers. Can it be done? Do the users actually want that? Or did you just make it so you can flash your skills or anything? So you have to check who you're making it for, what you're doing. Is it going to be aligned with the design, with the business decisions and everything? So you have a lot of constraints as a designer. And then the next one is, I can do whatever I want because I'm the designer and it's my call. Yeah, but again, a lot of people are going to be working with you, and you need to talk to people, you need to cooperate, and you don't get to make such calls on your own. You get to make, it's not assumptions, you can make a proposal, and then it can get shut down, and then you can work on it some more, and then it's going to be your call. The next one is, I think, the most hardest, and this one is, I get to design all the time. You do, but you get to design between the calls, the updates, the one-on-ones, the backlog refinements, the sprint plannings, the sprint kickoffs, the actual other things that you need to have meetings about. And there's just a lot of meetings while you do your work. And sometimes you learn to do your work while you're on the meetings, and sometimes that's fine, but you also need to respect your time and then try to manage that as well. And the last one is, a lot of people have a not too healthy approach to their design or opinion to their design, and they think that their design is the best and their design represents them, which is not true. So don't get married to your design. You are not your design and a bunch of other floscules, which mean that you're too tied to your design. What you're trying to do is fix a problem. You're not doing it on your own, and you're doing the best that you can, or should be doing the best that you can. And then if something's not working, people are not saying that you did a poor design, but it's not the right design for this opportunity. So if anybody tells you that your design is bad, they probably need to work on their feedback giving skills. So you need to ask for more feedback and to define why the design is bad. And it's usually not about you, not about the design. It's just trying to make the product as best as you can. And don't take it too hard, because again, you are not your design. And that's all of them that I had.
Absolutely. So before we move forward, how would you, now this isn't a question that we've discussed before, but how would you rate the UX maturity of the companies that you worked at, because that you are working at currently? Because Helena, I know that you're working on sprints, you're working on, there's a bunch of calls, you're working with a bunch of people, you have to check in with business to make sure that everything goes through. So for me, it sounds like it's a higher UX maturity. Yes, okay, lovely.
Definitely, yeah.
Okay, and Edwards, just so that everybody has an idea of where you're coming from and how they can position what you're saying, how would you rate the UX maturity of the companies you work at or you're currently working at?
I actually recently just started a new job.
Okay.
And I'm the only first designer
Okay.
in the company, first full-time designer in the company. And I've been in this position for a couple of times, being the first in a startup, which I do enjoy. And it's interesting because first of all, it depends on the company itself, but most of them, when they realize they need to hire a designer, they would value a designer and value design. And it's really interesting to be able to help develop that process, implement design thinking, being an ambassador of design thinking, and help grow that. So a lot more like planning and building the fundamental, implementing process in that way. Would be what I'm familiar with, but also things that I really enjoy. So like, in a startup, smaller size, you really get to be hands-on most parts of the things, especially with design, so that hopefully I can make it more mature.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm trying to help the audience understand where your answers are coming from. But Edward, from the way that you speak, how thoughtful you are, I feel like your fundamentals in design theory are very strong. And I think that you come from a place of deeper understanding of how design should be practiced, ideally.
Yeah, my recent roles are more with startup, but before I've been like UX manager and building from being first designer to build a team up. So going through that process really helped me know that have that fundamental is really important in order to scale up the design board within a company. And the other aspect is really just got to communicate, especially being the core designer, communicate with all the departments, get feedbacks. And I like to echo a little bit back to what we talked about earlier, design is never finished. And it's just like, what Nicholas and Helena mentioned as well, like, don't marry to your design. And also design is continual iteration. So knowing that you have chance to continue to improve it, you will be more loosened up to your design and more acceptable to other, not just teammates, but also departments, clients, CEO, management. Everyone will have different opinion, but having that structure. And I just want to highlight a little bit as well, like, when you come into conflicts with different, because I did see some of the questions as well in relation to that, if people have disagreement between a solution, right? When in doubt, test it out. Testing will validate, I could be wrong as a designer. Someone else in the team, not a designer, could have better ideas than I do. And just test it out, and you can, because the goal is to find the right solution. So when all of us are aligned in the same goal, everything will just mature appropriately, in the right way. Yeah.
And Nicholas, you transitioned from being an architect. How was that? Was it easy? I know there's a lot of transferable skills, because I myself in a past life was an architect. I had to go through a master's course to be confident enough to enter the field. How would you rate the UX maturity of where you're at? And how was it transitioning?
Yeah, that's a loaded question, but I'll split into two. In terms of transitioning from architecture to UX design, absolutely, there's a lot of skills that you can move from one career to another. Your design thinking, the way you approach problems, how you distill those problems and how you solve those, that's pretty similar. Honestly, it's really close. If you're a designer, you have that mindset, it really doesn't matter what industry you're working at. In terms of getting to UX or product design, the hardest part was getting to know the language, the pace, the different things that you have to work with. You're starting to talk about buttons and input fields instead of like doors and windows. So getting to know the language, the process, how you build stuff, that kind of stuff was the hardest, but it's totally doable. I personally wanted to do a master's or go to a bootcamp at the time. I didn't have the time or the resources, so I just did it myself, work out. So if you're passionate what you do and you're confident in yourself, it's totally doable. The second part of your question, or I guess, yeah, the other part of the question was about how they measure maturity in terms of UX in a company. And instead of talking about startups, I can talk a little bit more about bigger corporations or bigger companies. If you're a designer joining a company like that, how can you gauge for the UX maturity, and if that's a place where you want to go? There's a lot of questions you can ask during the interview process. At the end of the day, you are interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. So there's always questions like why you're looking to hire a designer, why? And depending on the answer, you can start to gauge like, hey, they really understand what they're trying to do, or they're just doing it to, like have a checkbox done and move on. When do they hire them for a designer? Where is that designer? You can speak with that person too, so starting to have those conversations can give you an understanding of the maturity of UX in the company. And you can also start to see like how does design have a seat on the table, how they're embedded with the teams, and how that collaboration happens. And you will see like it's going to get a lot of different answers, but hopefully it's going to give you a sense if the company really seeks UX and really understands how UX can be a great benefit for the outcomes that the company is trying to achieve.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. I know we didn't discuss that, but thanks for jumping in and giving the audience some more insight.
Can I chime in with a semi-immoral story? So I worked freelance for quite a while. I still work freelance when I have the time. And at one point in my career, I was approached by a client who wanted me to work with them as a freelance person, as a contractor. And from their type of communication, I was pretty sure that their UX maturity was minimal to something. And I wasn't all too happy to be working with them. So I did the thing where you just give a too high price, and then if it works out, you're going to get a lot of money. And if it doesn't work out, hey, I'm not missing anything. And to my unfortune or fortune, they said, yeah, sure. And I was like, okay, whatever. So I'm going to work for you now. And I started working with them, and they actually took in my advice, and it became a really, really enjoyable relationship because they just didn't have the right person to communicate with them. So it started off bad. It ended up very good because I think I made an impact, and I kind of made them more aware about UX and how it works. And for the product, I think it definitely had a good impact. So that's a story.
That's a great story. Okay, so now let's put on our hiring hats. How do you approach hiring, or what stands out for you when it comes to putting on the hiring manager hat? Anybody? Okay, I'm gonna put you, okay, go for it, Nicholas.
Yeah, I can start. When I think about hiring, there's a lot of steps that a candidate is going to go through, right? You're going to go through a portfolio, and that's going to give you, it's going to basically present yourself to whoever is looking to hire for that particular role. There's also like phone screens, like one-on-one interviews, portfolio presentations, and why not. I'm going to focus on the portfolio piece because I think it's really like important, and really is what gets you in the door to go to get the actual full interview. And what really stands out to me in the portfolio itself is storytelling. I review a lot of portfolios, and most of them just show me the steps that I don't know how, but we just learn in school that we should supposed to do them one after the other. So I open a portfolio and just says problem, research, wireframes, high fidelity prototypes, validation, conclusion, or whatever. And that doesn't tell me anything about the project, like, do you really follow those steps in that particular order? Was it exactly how that worked for this particular project? Honestly, highly likely not. Every project is different, has unique needs for different frameworks, for different ways of validating, different people you're collaborating with. Sometimes you will go from wireframes to high fidelity mocks to back to wireframes to back to research to questioning the problem all over again, and then all over again back to high fidelity mocks. In other cases, you may just have 10 minutes to come up with a solution and just do it in a post-it, and that's your case study, and that's totally valid. So for me, it's really focusing on telling the story behind that project and making sure that if someone is going to scroll through your portfolio for 30 seconds or through a case study for 30 seconds, they can really pick up the story that you're trying to tell for that unique project. And again, you don't really have to show all of those different steps that they teach us at school. Just show the ones that are really applied to a project and explain why you have them, what you learn from it, where did you fail, but what do you learn from that failure, and what you did after. So to me, the portfolios that do that focus on the process, on the storytelling, tell me like that rich story is what keeps me engaged. I actually want to read them, and I get excited about them. And those are the ones that truly like stand out. So that would be like my biggest, I guess, tip or recommendation when you think about hiring and making sure you stand out among other portfolios.
If I can tie into that, because it really does resonate with something that I wanted to say as well. When you are trying to explain something, why you designed it that way, try to explain what brought you to that design decision. So you based that decision on something. What was that? Was it data? Was it something that you found out during interviews? Was it something that you found out during talking to developers? Was it the limitation or something? So explain what brought you to that decision. Why did you do it? And why did it end up like that? Because it probably wasn't because I felt like it. So let us know what is your thought process behind something and how did you get to the end result. As for the portfolios being all the same, it's a win-lose situation because a lot of people have to go through a lot of portfolios. So it's good to have some kind of structure that you're then familiar with, and okay, this was the research, this was the something, this was the other thing. It depends on the case study, and knowing what to show and where is a very important thing. But I think for the first few portfolio items that you're going to have after you finish a bootcamp or after you start applying to places, it's good to have the process just so so you can show that you know what you're talking about. As for the other things that are important to me while doing the whole process, I like to get a feel of the personality of the person and how they're going to be a culture fit for the whole company, because you're going to, again, be working in a team. and you're going to be working with people. If you have a personality that's not going to clash, that's going to clash with others, or if you get very defensive about your design, that's not really going to work out with what we're trying to do here. So your attitude matters, and the way you present your designs also matters. A lot of people get anxious. I get anxious, and it's just a thing. Everybody knows when you're anxious. So don't be afraid to say, hey, I'm not really too comfortable, and it's going to be fine, because everybody is on your side and people just want to get to know you, your work, and how do you do your work. If you're feeling good about your work, that's going to show. And I think just try to do the best that you can, and that is going to show. And I think, oh yes, I have a really good one. One thing that I really love seeing in portfolios is genuine, messy, early forms of work, just like Nicholas said, the post-its. People, when they do their portfolios, they try to redraw everything to perfect scale, and then everything is just like very clean and perfect. And that's not what you did. I know that, you know that. Just show me the messy thing, because it's your personality. It's you. Why would you hide that? And it's when I see that, I just like smile and say, hee hee, and then move on. So Edward, what do you have?
Oh, just one thing. Well, I'd add to what you said, Elena, and what I mentioned at the beginning, just to be, I guess, clear about what stands out. I totally agree with putting the post-its and like the wireframe stuff, but just don't do it just post-its and say post-its and put a photo and move on. Like that doesn't tell me anything. You know, anyone can draw post-its. What's the rationale behind it? Why did you choose to use it? What did you learn from it? Why you decide to move to wireframe after? That's a really important part. Same with wireframes or anything else that you add. Anyway, just echoing what Elena was saying.
Exactly. Explaining why did you get to this decision, and why was that the deliverable that you had? Good.
You guys said everything. No, but no, I really agree with all that you guys have mentioned. You know, design rationale is really important, and being able to storytelling about your idea and concept is equally important. So I think both of them touch base on these key part. Maybe I will touch base on another aspect. You know, during interview, let's say there's two people with same level of execution of portfolio. How would I pick another person compared to another one during the interview process? It's really kind of what Helena mentioned, culture fit. I look for the people that I want to work with, that our team want to work with. So really being able to demonstrate that you are a person that people would like to work together with is really important, aside from showcasing your portfolio, having good case study, being able to present your ideas. Demonstrate that aspect, and this is totally transferable from any other job. You can use example from other jobs. You know, maybe I was working at a grocery store. You know, I go out of the way to help people to find their items. You know, things like that could equally be important to demonstrate that, you know, I have compassion for other people, I have empathy for people. That could demonstrate from any other job. So for those who are more new to the industry, definitely transfer all those, whether it's behavioral questions or knowledge that you have demonstrated in your other work. That makes you a better person to work with. Highlight those as key points during your interview and use those to answer questions and demonstrate that, you know, for like scenario questions. Like, it doesn't have to be a designer experience, because when you're applying on a junior role or early designer role, the hiring manager knows your experience level coming to the interview. So you don't have to demonstrate more than what you are, because they understand where you're coming from. So demonstrate your true self, but highlight those skill set and character that would make people want to work, would be my suggestions.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Edward. I think it's very important that everyone listening in understands how many portfolios we have to go through. And I think it was a great point that you made, Helena, that there's so many that you have to go through and just talk about how you got there. And thanks for your interview suggestions, Edward. But do you have anything that you may go back to your interviews and change the answer for in your job interview?
I have so many. I want to
Okay.
go back that I can't even tell a specific one, but maybe I will kickstart this one with the way I will look at it is there are oftentimes questions that I get that I will be like, oh crap, I don't know how to answer that. Oh, that's beyond my knowledge. We all have experienced those, and that is the worst moment of an interview when you don't know how to answer it. And oftentimes, or in early days, I would be like, damn, what should I say? You know, I would just answer or really high level, surface level of what the questions is about, or I may start repeating myself with useless information that people can tell, like, oh, this guy is just rambling, right? But now that I have learned after many interviews or hosting interviews, I would appreciate honesty, you know, like, I don't know that. Or, you know, that actually of my knowledge, great question. I actually don't know that and would love to learn it. You know, how do you turn those questions into opportunity and demonstrate your strength from weakness? You know, my weakness is that maybe I don't understand this question. I haven't got that knowledge, but my strength is that I'm super curious about these questions that I would love to learn, or maybe use other aspect that you can tie into to help look around that idea that, you know, I'm not so good at this. Yes, I admit it, but I also have this. Maybe I can offer that, and you can highlight that. So I think that that is a general approach that may be really good for most people who face these type of questions that they don't know how to answer. That would be my approach. Yeah. Maybe I will pass it to Nick.
Yeah, I think that was a great answer, Edward. I loved it. Do we, I guess, a little more specific of a question that I get and how I would answer it differently today? Once someone answered, how would I validate my design, or how would I know that my design is right? And the answer that I gave was basically user research and validating the design, which is, it's true. My newer answer would be way more complicated than that. It would be, yes, user research and validation, but also, is there product market fit? Does it align with the business? Is it technically feasible? Is it ethical? How would I measure the metrics and outcomes? Is it accessible? Is it really done? What happens after? So I think in reality, it's way more complicated than that, how you can measure the success of a design. So that's, I guess, a specific question that I would answer a little differently. And we'll also talk a little bit about your maturity in like working in tech, and we're working as a UX designers and starting to understand way beyond design that there's more implications that would have a direct impact on ensuring that your designs are successful.
Those are both great things. I had a different approach, and I wanted to say that I wouldn't re-answer any question differently, because everything up to here brought me to where I am in my career, and every mistake that I made during the interviews, I probably wouldn't be the right person for that job that I did not get. And then I grew, and wait, somebody's mentioning me. What did I say? Oh, you have a thing, and then you play with the thing while you talk. That helps a lot. So I've been playing with this thing the whole time, and it's practice. So you do your work, you're working with people, we're all people, and you just put it aside and do the job. And that's how you get less anxious at times, but maybe not. And then the thing helps. So my reply for this question was, I wouldn't change anything because it helped me grow in my career. And what I do have actually are two practical advices. One is for people who are just starting into interviewing. You have a couple of your projects, a couple of portfolio items that you have, a couple of case studies on a piece of paper, like physically on a piece of paper. Write out 3 sentences. One sentence is, what is the project about? What did you learn from it? And the third one is, what was the biggest problem that you had? If you write down those sentences about every project, you will learn them. And then if anybody asks you anything, you can kind of draw into, oh yeah, I had a project that I worked on, which had this problem. I solved it like this. So it helps you prepare. The same thing goes if you're a bit more mature in your career. Try to do the research on the company that you're interviewing with and see if they had anything that you can relate to from your previous career. And that's something that I do while interviewing. They have a problem, and then we start talking, and then I say, but wait, I have the perfect thing for you. And then I draw on my previous experience, and that tells them that I did the research on them, so I was proactive. And then I tell them how I resolved this problem, and then they either say, oh yeah, but that's not the problem we have. And they completely derail the interview because we just start chatting about the problem. How would you resolve the problem? And it gets more conversational instead of just an interview. So that's my approach, and I just try to break the mold like that. So either learn everything you can about your previous case studies, and that way you're going to be more prepared, or just derail the whole conversation and take it your way. It works.
Thanks for that. That was actually very practical, and I totally resonate with what Helena just said. Going back to Nicholas, you said something very interesting towards the end of your interview question, which was, is it ethical? So what do you think? Is ethical design going to be a reality soon, or is it going to remain a myth that, you know, we study about, we talk about, but never comes to fruition?
Great question. I don't know if it's a myth or a reality. I personally consider being ethical in everything that you do a reality, and that's something that I embrace as a designer. Either we're gonna call it officially something or not. I don't know if it really matters to me. I guess when I try to approach design, I think about it as the impact they will have on the product that I'm doing, the people are going to be using it, my family, my team, you know, like everyone that could be affected by my design decisions one way or another. To me, that's the way I think about ethics and ethical in general. Also, when I'm looking for a job, which it's been a while, but definitely think about the company you're getting to, like, do they have like good principles? Do they have any ethical responsibility? Are they doing anything for their community, for the planet, you know? And that to me is what I start to think about being ethical in general. Also, one thing you can do as a designer is focusing on your design, and your design decisions are made with an ethical mindset, you know, like they're respectful, they're truly helping someone, and they come from, I don't know, the heart in that way. So that's something that you can control, regardless if you call it one way or another, or if the company has its own things or another. Just make sure that you as a designer have that in mind all the time. And also keep in mind that some things will be out of your control when it comes to that kind of stuff. So focus on what you can control. And if you're in a situation it's not great in that reason, maybe you think about how can you react in a positive way and have a positive impact from it. So that's the way I try to think about ethical design in general. I don't know what others think.
What do you think, Helena?
I agree. I'm not sure that ethical design as a loud thing is going to be the future soon, because we do have business goals, we do have everything, and sometimes business goals require just brute force. But you are a person, you are the designer, and you can maybe make a decision that's good for the user, but then you don't tell anyone that you made this decision because that's the good thing for the user. So you can make the product less addictive. You can make the product less stand out with some bad practices. You can make less dark pattern design decisions because it's up to you. You get to make those calls. If anybody asks you, you can say, oh, it didn't even cross my mind to go into this dark pattern, but maybe we can solve it this way and it's going to work better. So you can always be tactical about it and do the right thing because you're here for the users and you're representing them. So try to make their lives easier. That's, I think, the approach that I take. And I do have to say one thing, Nicholas, just like you said, the current company that I'm in, Harness, they're perfect for me because they're doing everything in their possibility to do beneficial things. They're doing things with donations and with a lot of NGOs, and it's an enjoyable place to be. Everybody is positive and everybody has a really good outcome and outlook onto everything. So I set up myself towards companies like that, and then I ended up in one. So it was my attitude that drove me towards them, and I couldn't be happier to where I'm working right now.
Great.
Likewise. Yeah, likewise to Helena. Like, I just started a new job at a health tech company, which is meaningful because they're helping, basically in short, improving like patient application process to drugs. So it's essentially helping people. So that's also one of a big focus for myself. And I think ethical overall is something that starts from your true self, right? It has to start from you instead of just looking at from other people. But of course, you can go for like companies or work for places that have better ethical approach, which I totally agree. But first of all, focus on yourself first. It has to start from you. You know, you have to treat everyone ethically in order to be that ambassador. And I would say you also understand the fact that you cannot control what other people or company do in a way. Like that's, for me, that is the reality. But do the best we can is what I would shell out, highlight on top of what they just mentioned. Because at the end of the day, we're a designer, we have crazy imagination, that's cool, but there's only so much we can deliver as a reality. But every big step starts from small steps. So I think as long as we start from ourselves, take our step and influence other people, just like, maybe take a step back instead of, being high level question like ethical design, how can I get my company, how can I get my teammates to have more empathy, right? That could be a smaller step. And just by having that, people will become better in making those ethical decisions overall as a business. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as you said, I think we need to focus on growing our awareness of whom we're impacting and whom we're coming into contact with, not just at work, but through our products. How are we, causing this domino effect or butterfly effect? And the more our awareness grows, the better we get at making these decisions. Brilliant. So we have about 2 minutes left, and we have a bunch of questions, but I'm actually going to condense all of them because we've got a couple of questions about case study examples and portfolio examples. So do you guys have anything to add in and help out with examples for portfolios or projects?
I'm not sure if I have something like on top of mind that I can share, but one thing that I find useful when you're looking into building a portfolio is take a look at how articles, blog posts, or even case studies are written in other mediums, for example, Medium. They do a really good job. Some of the great writers do a really good job of really telling a great story. Like the headers are telling you a story, is really well written. So there's a lot of things that we can learn as designers or how those stories are represented, how easy to them to read, and what of that can be applied to your case study. Because at the end of the day, the case study has to be easy to understand, easy to read. Someone should be able to pick up and really be able to understand the story behind it. So that's something that I have found useful in the past that hopefully is something that could be a good recommendation for everyone.
Yeah, I think that's a great closing note because I also generally, when I get asked this question, I don't really have a go-to answer. I would suggest that you guys take the time to reach out to these mentors one-on-one. And yeah, that might actually help. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. I definitely had a lot of fun talking to you guys, learning more from different parts of the world and seeing how it's actually same, but also different. And I really look forward to connecting with you guys offline. So for those of you who are still around, we're going to be in touch with you about the giveaways. So yeah, just watch out for that and have a good one.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. It was very
Thanks, everyone.
fun.